Hello, everybody, and welcome to Narativ Live. It is good to be with you, and even better to be back with Eddy Aragon, live from Albuquerque. Eddy Aragon, of course, you all know, is from the Rock of Talk, as they say in your slogan, which is brilliant. KIVA is the call sign in Albuquerque. Eddy, it's good to see you. Thanks for doing this with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. Apologies for the technical difficulties yesterday.
You know, stuff happens. I'm used to it. It happens all the time around here. I've got so many questions to ask you about what went on in Zorro Ranch. And also lately there's been, renewed interest in what might be beneath Zorro Ranch. And we'll get into that a little bit later. There's all sorts of ideas. There's survivors who've claimed that there are literally tunnels and laboratories and all sorts of crazy things that you wouldn't imagine under your typical cattle ranch. There is also some people who say that this was really a center for nuclear smuggling, to smuggle nuclear secrets for them via the Santa Fe Institute or studies via the Santa Fe Institute. But I'm also really interested in just the experience you've had as the guy who covered most of this or uncovered most of this. I mean, there's certainly very few people who've been as close to the story as long as you have. Do you remember when you first heard about Jeff Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell arriving in your community?
Yeah, so that was, everything in 2019. Prior to that, I mean, I didn't really know anything about Jeffrey Epstein. So until it became a national, story with him being arrested, there wasn't any focus for me. It wasn't something I jumped on. It wasn't anything that oh my gosh, we have this guy here. This became something that was created by the community, a community that was getting no coverage at all by the local ABC, NBC, CBS affiliates. They just ignored the story.
Why did they ignore it? Did they ever give a reason? They just didn't want to.
That's where, the cover up is always worse than the crime. And, they're very connected to, a particular party here in New Mexico. And so when you have that type of influence, when you can pick up the phone, when you're not doing your job as an attorney general, as the land commissioner, when you had the teeth to do it, that's why I say the cover up really is worse than the crime. And the cover up, I'm on it, right? So July 7th comes around, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein's taken in. The community is like, oh, I know that guy, something was going on over there for sure. Prior to that, I mean, there was really tepid interest, maybe if a cover page or two, it was written about the largest, owner, whatever. And then come, about a month later when he takes his life, during that time, then it just sizzled, right? And so we were waiting for, the Paris went down, of course, New York went down, Palm Beach went down, Little St. James went down. It's like, okay, well, what's going to happen to Zorro Ranch, right? Mm. And so all of these people were coming forward because my signal reaches out there. It's a well-listened to radio station on the other side, conservative. A lot of those people in that community, believe it or not, are very conservative. Edgewood, Moriarty, Stanley, New Mexico, these are all places that, they get their AM station. So then you just start getting, leads, Zev, and people are coming forward because they want some form of justice. They don't want this type of thing in their community, right? So I'm hearing not just from people that I'm hearing from people who work on the ranch or worked on the ranch.
Right.
And that's where this gets, well, I'm the only person covering it. We're going to take some calls. I'm going to do some investigations. I'm going to start. And it just took on a life of its own, as you know. I mean,
yeah. I mean, this the time that I found you was when everyone else I think found you, although I might have got into press before everybody else, was when you this incredible memo came out, which is an email from you. I don't know who you sent it to, but I presume it's someone at the FBI or something like that. I don't where you were referring them to an email that was sent to you. And this is a guy named, actually, you told us his name yesterday. I don't know if we should be saying his name, because I'm not sure does that matter if we say his name or not? Is that
I'd rather not get into names.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
fair enough.
Go ahead. Yeah.
And this email is quite stunning in many ways because it contains allegations from this person who worked at the ranch. I mean, this is not just somebody who was temporarily there. This was a full-time employee at the ranch. Is that right?
Yes, correct. And there are people who had access to the house, the main house that was built in 99. And then there was people who didn't have access. And you had to be a trusted confidant of Jeffrey Epstein, right, in order to get to the main house. No NDA is going to prevent something like that. No kind of agreement. I mean, it's just kind of crazy, right? You think about, like, who's he going to let to the ranch part? Who's he going to let to the, his pilot, Visovsky, who basically has a house behind the ranch. And then you have the main house. So where was this operation set up? The operation, this blackmail operation, was set up at the main house.
Right. Now, before we get into the actual details of this email, because it is really interesting, I think we should maybe step back and take a look at this property and maybe just understand the vastness of this property, because it is, and this is someone's drone video, which I've borrowed, and I hope they're okay with it. I mean, it is a very vast property, and this will give you a sense of how vast it is as it flies in here, but I'm going to zoom it in a little bit because it is in an interesting location. Yeah. Right?
So stop right there. I think if you could hit pause on that. There's some bizarre things here that are very important. So just look at that. You see how it's elevated. You see the road. That road, that right there, that wise to something called a yurt.
Okay.
That's where they found the defibrillator. That's where they found the ritual statues. You can pull the article from Al Jazeera. So that wise right in that area. You can
and a yurt what is a yurt?
It's like a tent. It's like basically a kiva, like a gathering place.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they found a defibrillator there, which is interesting.
Yeah. Well, we got into it a little bit on another interview with WBC, and we talked a lot about it because, you start talking about adrenochrome and, blood harvesting and things like that. And so, I don't really want to jump into that sandbox.
Yeah, we could get there. We'll get there maybe in the show, but I'm really interested in all of it actually, because it is such an interesting its motive in some ways of what happened there. But then we sort of fly into, so it is elevated, and that's unique because it provides all sorts of opportunities for what you might put underneath it. But also what we're looking at here is what people are calling the helipad, right? And you sort of move in and the expectation, I mean, my initial reaction, look, it looks like a helicopter pad. It does look like a helicopter pad. You know it as being something else. You've described it as something else. What is it?
The Jericho Labyrinth. So you even just Google Jericho Labyrinth. I mean, you can pull it up for your viewers if you wanted to do that. You can superimpose the Jericho Labyrinth right directly on top of it. It's exactly that. And, hit me like a ton of bricks because, this wasn't created until 2013 is when that was created, that Jericho Labyrinth. So that sits at 6,000, the elevation, 6,600 feet.
Mm-hmm. It's an unusually, it looks flat, and it is flat, but it also seems to jut out of the typical topography. If you'd expect those sort of hills to continue, it sort of sticks out a little bit, right? I mean, it's not.
Do you find it strange, if you don't mind hitting pause right there? Boom.
Yeah.
Do you find it strange that the new owner just randomly just started digging that up? I mean,
yes, I find it pretty unusual.
I find that to be the strangest of things. Like, it's sitting out there, seemingly innocuous, right? And then you have it there, and then this is what it looks like now. It's all dug up, trench underneath. This is the New York Times.
I've actually got a video of the dig here. I can actually show you what it looks like. I think. I think this is it.
I think that over there is.
Okay, sorry. This is you can see the side of the dig here is already happening. You don't see it's not a fantastic video of the dig, but you can see the difference on the side here. And then I've got a photograph which I'll find you in just a second. But there's clearly an operation here to dig up. Let me return to where we were before, to dig up this area and when did this happen? This was when the new owners came by, right? The new owners, I'm jumping around here a little bit. The new owners bought the place, and this is the Huffins, the people who work.
Yeah.
Who are they? Who are the Huffins?
He's a Republican controller. He's running for controller, which I think is like
treasurer, basically.
Yeah, in Texas. So it's a state office. but yeah, he purchased it and renamed it San Rafael. But the weird part about it is you can trace the company San Rafael going all the way back to 2006. So it's just a bizarre thing. There's also a strange thing there about Jeffrey's connections to the Dallas community, which is also very strange. You know, his friends that he went to school with in Jersey, they're all Dallas businessmen.
Right.
You could look them up in the files. I mean, just they're there. So I don't know. There's a little bit of weird crossover for me. I haven't really, kicked that can too far down the road yet. But it is definitely intriguing. I probably spent 2 to 3 days. And what's really cool.
That's the dig, by the way. To show everyone just a still of what it looked like as they were digging this thing up. I mean,
and for what purpose? Like, why get rid of it? It makes no sense. Just leave it out there. If it was totally innocuous and it wasn't a problem, why are you digging it up?
And why are you digging it up so deeply? I mean, you get that there's, it looks like a meditation garden at best. That would be a few rocks and some garden. But why do you need to go down what looks like, 10 feet? I don't know. It's a lot that they're going down.
You know where they're taking that dirt?
No.
Taking that dirt to outside Zorro Ranch as you're driving to the side. You can see the piles of dirt along Highway 41 right there. It's bizarre. So I can't understand it for the life of me why you would touch it. There's no reason to touch it. The Jericho Labyrinth, of course, you probably know the story about Jericho and child sacrifice.
I know some of the story. I know that it's a symbol of spiritual enlightenment as well as being, you're saying it's child sacrifice, but why don't you tell us more about why it's considered a symbol of child sacrifice?
To go back into the biblical story and the walls of the city of Jericho, and one of the things that they do to defy God, right, to show God that they have power over him, right, is they made sacrifices to their god, Baal, right? I mean, El, like these who they, like, stop right there. Stop that video.
Sorry, 1 second. Let me see. There you go. Sorry, I put it back.
So look straight down at the area that I've told you about. There's a door right there just outside the pool room there at the bottom, and the door goes right underneath that little area.
That's hard for people to maybe see what's going on, but there is a basement in this building, and we'll go through the floor plans a little bit later on, of the ones we have. But you've got 2 stories above ground, and then below ground it looks like there's a basement with a door that goes out, or several doors that go out into this little yard. And then this area adjacent to the Jericho Labyrinth, as you call it, is actually elevated. So it's that whole area is above where the basement is, which is unusual. I agree that that's an unusual kind of design element, but it also suggests that there is some sort of perhaps access from underneath the house or something to underneath the labyrinth area. And that just looks like what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I'm looking at, some of the plans and stuff. It's funny because you pulled up the plans that you had for the Epstein files, and then I have a whole other set of plans on here.
Yeah, you got the real thing.
One of the crazy things about it is the large mechanical rooms. What is going on in there? So originally, when I first looked at the plans, I'm like, oh, must be the place where he kept all of his recordings, his tapes and stuff. But then you start looking at some of the Palm Beach, video when the FBI went in. I'm sure you've seen all of that.
Yeah.
So if you look at the Palm Beach video, and we can get back to the email that I received, is everything was on tapes, or not tapes, excuse me, on CD-ROMs or DVD-ROMs, right? And you have to go back to like where the technology was back then. So that stuff was cataloged, right? It was recorded. This is the same syntax as you see in my email that somebody would have recorded and say, okay, well, it's truncated, right? That's the list of 7 things plus 2 buried in the hills of Zorro Ranch.
Let's go do that email. But first, just to remind people how remote this is, how completely isolated this is, how there was nothing really here at the time that Jeffrey Epstein arrived in. They bought the farm, I guess, in 1993 from the then governor of New Mexico, and that's Governor King, Bruce King, if I'm not mistaken.
this is the weird part. And Zeb, just to kind of go with me on this, talking about this. There's no listing for this property. Never was listed. Rhonda is now 83. She's the one who transacted it. John Kelly, of course, everyone knows that, he's the U.S. attorney. He became power of attorney for Jeffrey Epstein on March.
John Kelly, right? Yeah, he became the U.S. attorney, right?
Yeah, so he became. He works down the street, the city of Albuquerque. He's actually on the board. I didn't realize that I met him. Yeah, because I had to go through like an ethics complaint when I was running for mayor. That's where. So I was like, okay, this is bizarre. They were trying to oust me from the race or whatever because of my residence. Anyway. Jeffrey Epstein first got to the White House on February 25th, 1993. He purchased the property sight unseen February 22nd for a property that was not listed. February 2nd, 1993. Remember, the cover-up is worse than the crime here. Bill Clinton didn't take office. Bill Clinton took office 32 days before that, obviously January 20th, 1993, when he came into office. Like, this whole thing was set up, right?
It seems coincidental. It seems very weird.
No, there are no coincidences.
Yeah. It's interesting. With Steve Hoffenberg, who that I know as well, and he said to me that the reason Jeffrey Epstein was created as an operational thing for the Israelis was to discredit Bill Clinton, because they didn't want Clinton signing a peace agreement with the Palestinians. And Hoff was he said that to me a million times. Yeah. And so Jeffrey Epstein's appearance at the White House, so early in the White House, and then becoming such close friends with Clinton, even though Clinton to this day denies it, is weird. And then on top of that, what's weird is that he gets this property from the governor of New Mexico, basically, who just gives it to him.
Yeah, the governor of New Mexico. Not a former governor, not a would-be governor, a governor who was in his second term. And Bruce King was the chairman for Bill Clinton's campaign.
In New Mexico.
In New Mexico, yeah. Generally it kind of goes. And 3 o'clock in the morning, I remember it clear as day, the day that he was elected, November, 1992, because I'd gone to Boys Nation, and I was waiting outside so I could meet Bill Clinton. I had my Boys Nation pen. I knew he went to Boys Nation. I wanted to go give it to him. His first stop, Zev, on the day that he was elected was none other than him and Al Gore coming through here on their, whirlwind tour.
Oh, really?
Albuquerque, New Mexico. Right?
Interesting.
At the Albuquerque International Airport. So it's just, there are no coincidences. We've manufactured the atom bomb. Obviously, there's all sorts of things, secrets with the Santa Fe Institute, which is crucial. It's a critical and key point for all of it.
Actually, let's talk a little bit about that, because this is not just any land. This is the land that runs between Los Alamos and Sandia, the two important nuclear labs that America has. It's where as you point out, the nuclear bomb was invented. The Manhattan Project basically took place there, or the bomb was made there, if I'm not mistaken. And so you've got, this is political territory, geopolitical territory as well. It's not just any land. So
you started out the show talking about nuclear secrets, right? Well, the nuclear secrets were given to the Russians or the Soviets, whatever, through something, we had Operation Paperclip here. And of course, you've seen Oppenheimer, and you saw, well, we can't just have the bomb. Someone else has to balance it out and have the bomb as well. That was done at a 5 and dime store in the Santa Fe Plaza. That's what exchanged. That's literally, there's a great book about it.
Yeah.
There's a great book, but yeah, all that stuff was happening right there. Right up the road from there is the Santa Fe Institute that was established back in 1984. And of course,
and so the Santa Fe Institute is really important, because Jeffrey Epstein says to Steve Bannon in an interview that we aired much later, he said to him, the reason I went to Santa Fe is because all these nuclear scientists were leaving Los Alamos and whatever, and they were going to the Santa Fe Institute, and we wanted to support those nuclear scientists in their private endeavors. Now, I don't know. It seems like a stretch for this finance guy from Brooklyn to be so interested in nuclear science, but maybe he is. And then he lands up going to Santa Fe, and endorsing or funding a chair in the name of Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, who had previously famously given Los Alamos the promised software. I mean, it seems like nuclear secrets were a big part of at least what he was interested in funding for the reason of sharing it elsewhere. I mean, it wasn't just that he was funding it. He was funding it with an interest to share it.
Yeah, so I think, you can go back to Ironic Contra as well. You mentioned promise. Not a whole lot of people validated that. I love that you know about these types of things.
Oh, I know lots about promise. Too much about promise.
And it had a back door. I mean, he pulled it with John Tower, who's going to be the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, same year that Robert Maxwell dies, the same year that John Tower dies,
mysteriously on a plane crash.
Yeah, in a plane crash over Georgia. And, that's just kind of the way that this whole thing works. And the Santa Fe Institute was started by the Maxwells. That's who ultimately started it.
Really? I didn't know that part. That's brand new to me. Oh, that's really fascinaning.
We're involved Christine Maxwell and then Ghislaine Maxwell, obviously being the youngest. She's the one who introduced, as you know, Mary Gell-Mann, who is one of the 9 founding members. 7 of them were from Los Alamos National Labs, and the other 2 were, I don't know what the other 2 were, but they weren't with Los Alamos National Labs. And the key for the Santa Fe Institute, like what's so important as it being sort of like this laboratory for different ways of thinking. And that's really is like this creative endeavors. And that's who is directly connected to MIT, directly connected to Harvard, directly connected to, the most well-funded financial institutions in the world. Academic institutions in America. I mean, I think the largest water rights holder now in California, I heard this the other day, is Harvard University. Did you know that?
I did know that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, just fascinating little tidbits here. But that was started in '84. And that was at the same time that Robert Maxwell was here with Tower selling Promise software to Sandia National Labs and there's no coincidence there.
That just all seems so obvious, right? It seems like you're actually like it's not even that hard to put the pieces together.
No, it's not. But you do have to have focus. This isn't something you can just kind of come into and it's like, well, what's the significance of this? Like, there's so much gravitas here and what happened and how it was set up that you have to have been involved in thinking about this for long periods of time. You go take a shower, stuff just starts popping in your head. Oh my gosh, that is correct. And the lights have just been going off for a very long time. All my videos are banned, right? I've been kicked off of every social media that there is. I mean, it didn't matter if it was Facebook,
really?
Twitter, everything I just got cleared out. And the more stuff I talked about, the more the attacks came for me, is because we were talking about this. Isn't new. I've been talking about this in those videos. You can see it if you go to Rock of Talk and you click on Zorro Ranch. You'll notice that I'm talking about all this 7 years ago. Like, we got to shut this guy up. And it got so bad, as I told you, that they went and took down my radio station at the top of the Sandias. You
had an FM radio station that was literally the tower was taken down. And you think that was as a result of you encouraging people to focus on what was going on there. I'm sorry about that. That sounds like an incredibly difficult ordeal to do. You're doing your job.
I'll send you the video on all of that. But, when you have the Santa Fe Institute, that's just a couple of seconds away from 10,000 Waves, which is where Jeffrey Epstein, would farm his masseuses. And then 10,000 Waves, I think like last week or 2 weeks ago, just oddly came out. We had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, you don't need to come out and say that. I mean, I've been to some.
I guess there's lots of allegations that they did. But because I think that came out in the Epstein files as well. But why this collision between these girls and this crazy, maybe egg farming? We can get into that a little bit. But why the collision between that and the nuclear scientists? I've never quite, they just don't necessarily mesh together that perfectly. I mean, it just seems hard to imagine why the president of the United States wants to come down there, and why, Chauntae Davies is there and they're having whatever relationships. It all seems it just seems like it doesn't necessarily connect. And the only answer really is around blackmail. But even with these scientists, is that you think what was going on with the scientists? Was it blackmail, or was that more part of the eugenics piece of what they were doing?
Yeah, I think that was part of more of the eugenics piece for sure. And you got to have these guys. They're nerds. They're not great with women, and they still want to go ahead and experiment. They probably don't know how to go into a bar and pick up a woman, or go into a club, or meet somebody just out. This is not what they do. They're just geared differently. I think it was partly an appeasement for them. I see that weird. What was Stephen Hawking? You've seen that photo of him where he's all these girls are dancing around him. And it's just bizarre. And you're like, well, yeah, even Stephen Hawking had a desire for that. So you're asking me to put, together human nature. That's all.
It is human nature, perhaps. We should say a couple of things here that are very important about the gravitas of it, because you did say it, and I don't want it to sort of fly by. Nuclear weapons have changed the course of history in the last, 100 years more. We have seen a completely revised balance of power around the world. America's strength really comes from nuclear weapons, if you really think about it. And to some extent, what we're fighting the war over in Iran right now is still nuclear weapons. We're seeing, an emerging convergence of nuclear weapons amongst the Chinese, Russians, and if America joins that sort of alliance, they'll have more nuclear weapons than the rest of the world combined. That's a terrifying consequence because it throws the balance out of whack. But, we are seeing nukes are important because they, as we see in Iran, it gives them permission to survive. If the Iranians get a nuclear weapon, well, they then have the ultimate threat to make sure that they survive. And Israel, which is one of these countries that Jeffrey Epstein was very closely associated with, was spying for, or as an asset for, let's call him that, was also interested in nuclear weapons at the time, and was very interested, as was Robert Maxwell for the KGB and for Mossad, in what was going on in America's nuclear science world, because America was leading the charge here, and the continuing threat that America posed to the rest of the world in terms of Russia, or how they would have felt about it, would have come from the nuclear power. It would have come from nukes. America's stronger nukes. That means that we're more vulnerable, the Russians would have thought. So that's why they were spying on these facilities, and why they were trying to get these secrets out, not only through here, through Pergamon Press and through other things, trying to extract these secrets, get them into Russian hands, so the Russians, would be able to catch up to America, which is clearly running ahead of the pack. And Israel didn't have necessarily the bomb at the time, and what they've done ever since.
They had it in 1968, if I'm not mistaken. So when they got it, the United States didn't like that at all. We were not very happy with Israel. It was also the very same time some other things started here in the state of New Mexico from oil and gas, which is our sovereign wealth fund, which is the third largest, which is the other reason Jeffrey Epstein was here. It wasn't just like a blackmail operation or to fuel the creative thinking of the Santa Fe Institute. He was also tied directly into the financial crisis of 2008. And I mean, people need to understand who he was, what he was involved with. Like when you start getting into that stuff, it's like, well, where's he getting all this money from? Well, we have a sovereign wealth fund of $71 billion now here in the state of New Mexico. And you do? Oh yeah, third largest in the country. It is gigantic. The only two that are larger are Alaska and Texas.
Well, why is it so hard to get things done in New Mexico then? Why is it so hard for people to get hands on their money?
You're asking all the right questions. I mean, the most obvious questions, just things don't make sense here. We have probably the lowest, unfortunately, educated population, probably the most drug addicted population. I think that study just came out. There's no logic here. There's no reason why we shouldn't just go ahead and just empty out that fund and bring in doctors. We're the only state that has doctors that are picking up and leaving. They're like, well, this is the home of the nuclear weapon. This is Oppenheimer. Here's where he summered, and before he decided he wanted to build the lab right here at 8,000 feet at Los Alamos National Labs, and it changed the course of history. So we have the highest PhDs per capita in the country, just right down the road, and all the kids go to school right across the street from where I live, over here at Albuquerque Academy. And I want to bring this up to you because this is another wrinkle. There's a guy by the name of Joshua Cooper Ramo. And he's in the Epstein files. He's also head of the Kissinger Institute. And we start talking about when all this stuff was developed, and like, these are only people who got together with each other, right? So, you start to think about what they were talking about, how they changed the course of history. Of course, all about Howard Lutnick and being next door neighbors. I was just at Jeffrey Epstein's house, by the way, last month, and I saw like Howard Lutnick.
They're really close. I always imagine there's a door between those two inside somewhere. They just cross paths. He denies it up completely, but it just seems to me like they were very, very close. Not only that, in 2008, you mentioned 2008 as the crash.
Yeah.
That is, I've written a lot about that in The Greatest Heist, and Lutnick's Cantor Fitzgerald was very involved in that collapse in 2008, along with the Jeffrey Epstein. So anyway, we digress. Let's get back to what happened in Zorro, because I want to get to this letter. But before we do that, just to sort of ground us a little bit here, there's been a few people who've come out of Zorro, survivors, who have said things about what went on there. And this is one of them. She's a South African, Juliet Burke, I think is her name. And I'm going to just play you a little bit of an interview that she's done that's online. And then I'm going to play you something else by another one. But let's just to remember, before we get to your email, of how, this became the biggest of all the Epstein locations for, human trafficking and for this unusual experimentation.
I first got there, very weird artwork on the wall. It was a naked girl, and there was like a big war. So it was a very disturbing picture. I've never seen a picture like that. He had a lot of weird stuff around his house. There was just pictures of naked girls everywhere. And there was a lot of naked pictures of Ghislaine around too. Well, when I first met Ghislaine, I was told that she was Epstein's girlfriend. The thing is, I didn't even see them hold hands or kiss once, or even give each other a hug, to be honest. I never saw them come that close. So it definitely wasn't a romantic relationship. Jeffrey really liked watching movies. And the next day, another girl was brought in, and we were watching a movie, and this other girl was there, and she started performing a sex act on him while I was sitting next to him, and I was absolutely petrified. Because I was so young, and I'd never seen anything like that, so I just ran out of the room, and I was crying.
And then she goes on to say, this remarkable story of how she woke up one day, she doesn't know if there was a day or night, but she woke up in a lab, or something that looked to her like a lab. There were 6 people surrounding her in hazmat suits and a doctor. And they had obviously done something to her because she felt paralyzed. The doctor said, everything will be okay. And then she passed out again. She was under, anesthetic or something. And that is the first time we've heard about this idea that there's a lab underneath the ground in Zorro where some sort of unusual experiments took place. The only thing that she has to remind herself of that something happened that night is a scar above her pelvis, which is, significant because that might be an indication of what they were doing with her. But it is interesting that all of this comes at the same time as people have been talking about the egg farming, this idea that they were trying to create this perfect gene pool in order to populate the world with this perfect gene pool. And we get some of that from Chauntae Davies, who did an interview recently with 60 Minutes. Let's listen to this and we'll come back and get it.
First, on the island, and then at Zorro Ranch. Of all the locations, I would say Zorro Ranch was probably the most eerie. Just giant and quiet and literally in the middle of nowhere and miles and miles. There was a lot of time spent in my room at Zorro, feeling very much like a mouse trapped in its cage, just kind of waiting until someone would come to my door and say, Jeffrey's ready for his massage now.
What did that really mean?
Rape. Yeah, it was full-on, forced-on sexual. rape.
So that's the kind of things that was going on there. And at times, one of them has said that it was 60 girls that passed through there in the time that they were there. This was a full-scale industrial machine of young women, young girls being picked up, put through whatever it was they were doing there, and it included rape, but there's also supposedly this laboratory element to it. Do you know of anything around that? Did that come up in your time? You've been covering this for a long time. Have you been hearing about the allegations of a laboratory and these experiments and this sort of industrial scale baby factory?
So a guy called me randomly from Santa Fe, let's say like 2 months ago, 3 months after these Epstein files came out. His was the first phone call that I ever took that indicated that there was something greater going on for the baby farm. And of course, you know, he talked about it quite a little bit in conversations. It's well documented. So I have never come across a thing that would suggest anything of a laboratory or all that. What I will tell you, and I do trust my gut, as I know you do, Zev, and you know, we trust no one. I trust my gut. Her pace, the way that she's speaking about it, I believe 1,000%. There's no reason to manufacture something like that up. I would definitely want to explore more of that angle of it. But I will tell you that here's something that's, I pulled this up because you pulled up Chauntae Davies. So that's a petition we circulated. And remember when I tell you that the cover up is worse than the crime? Well, remember, this whole thing has been set up and engineered for a very long time. I mean, this was designed. And this, what we got the people of Santa Fe County to do, who no doubt know something, right? They know something. They've interfaced. There's probably a bunch of people around there. They don't want to come out. They all wanted to come and talk to me when this first, because they thought there was going to be justice. But here we are 7 years later. There is no justice. New Mexico itself has blood on its hands as a result of this. And what I was trying to do, you know,